human attention rarely remains still. Even when the body is motionless, the mind continues to move. It shifts between memories, projections, fragments of thought, and imagined outcomes that are not necessarily connected to what is happening now. This constant movement has become so familiar that it often goes unnoticed. Only when the external environment becomes quiet and stable does this internal activity begin to reveal itself. In the absence of clear external stimulation, the mind does not shut down. It reorganizes. It searches for reference points. It attempts to fill the space with interpretation, anticipation, or recall. Not because something needs to be solved, but because this is how it has learned to function. When nothing happens externally, the internal experience expands. Time begins to feel different. Thoughts become more noticeable. Attention becomes sensitive to subtle changes. There is no clear direction to follow, and that lack of direction exposes how the mind behaves when it is not assigned a task. This state is often labeled as discomfort, not because it is inherently unpleasant, but because it lacks familiar structure. Without constant stimulation, attention loses its usual anchors. In daily life, attention is almost always pointed towards something: a goal, a conversation, a screen, a future action. This constant orientation creates the sense of continuity and purpose. When that orientation dissolves, attention turns inward. This inward turn is rarely intentional. It is usually avoided by filling time with activity, even when that activity is unnecessary. Silence is interpreted as emptiness, stillness as absence. Yet these states are full of subtle internal processes that normally remain hidden beneath constant engagement. When attention is no longer dispersed, it begins to observe itself. Repetitive thoughts appear, unanswered questions resurface. Possible scenarios are constructed without sufficient information. This happens automatically without conscious decision. The mind is designed to anticipate, to reduce uncertainty, to prepare for what might happen. When it does not receive clear external input, it uses internal material to complete the picture. This is not a malfunction. It is a fundamental mechanism. But when there is no actual threat or decision to make, this anticipation can generate tension. Meanwhile, the body remains present. It breathes, it adjusts, it maintains its internal rhythm without interpreting what is happening. Unlike the mind, the body does not project itself forward. It simply exists within the current moment. When attention shifts toward bodily sensation, the experience subtly changes. Breathing becomes noticeable. Physical sensations gain clarity. There is no narrative attached to them, no story to explain. They simply occur. This contrast between mind and body reveals two different relationships with time. The mind often lives ahead or behind. The body remains where it is, not by choice, but by nature. Observing this difference without trying to correct it reveals how much mental effort is spent trying to escape the present. Not because the present is lacking, but because movement has become habitual. Stillness does not stop thought. It exposes it. It reveals its rhythm, its repetition, its tendency to return to the same patterns. These patterns are not always meaningful. They are simply habitual. Over time, without interference, these patterns lose intensity. They do not disappear, but they no longer dominate the entire experience. Thought continues, but it occupies less space. This shift does not occur suddenly. There is no clear moment of change. It happens gradually, quietly. Attention becomes less reactive to every thought that arises. External silence does not impose calm. It simply creates the conditions for the mind to be seen as it is, without distraction, without stimulation, without a narrative to support it. In this state, time is experienced differently, not as something to be used, but as a continuous flow that does not require participation. Time does not speed up or slow down. The perception of it changes. The urge to control experience weakens when it becomes clear that not everything requires intervention. Not every moment needs to be filled with action or meaning. This kind of observation does not aim to produce a result. It does not promise clarity or resolution. It has no final goal. It is simply a way of being with experience as it unfolds. By remaining in this state, it becomes evident that much mental discomfort does not arise from events themselves, but from constant interpretation of what is happening or what might happen. The mind suffers more in imagination than in direct experience. When experience is allowed to continue without modification, something reorganizes internally. Not because thinking stops, but because it stops operating compulsively. Attention becomes broader. It includes thoughts, sensations, distant sounds, even silence itself. Nothing needs to be excluded. Nothing needs to be emphasized. This state is not extraordinary. It is not mystical. It is not special. It is simply what remains when experience is no longer interrupted. The difficulty is not reaching this state, but allowing it, not turning it into a task, not demanding that it feel a certain way. The mind seeks conclusions. It seeks closure. It seeks understanding. But not every process offers resolution. Some processes simply continue. Accepting that continuity without trying to resolve it reduces internal friction. Thought remains, but it loses its urgency. The environment remains unchanged. The body continues to breathe. Time moves forward. Nothing visibly shifts, and yet the relationship to experience changes. Not because something new appears, but because resistance to what is already present decreases. This observation does not need to be maintained. It does not require effort. It happens naturally when it is not interrupted. And although it does not provide definitive answers, it reveals how attention behaves when it is not directed toward an objective. There is no clear ending. There is no final resolution. Experience continues, and within that continuity, the mind gradually learns, without realizing it, that not everything needs to be anticipated, explained, or controlled immediately. Some moments do not need to be understood. They only need to be passed through.